Hi guys, and welcome back to Naturally Ellie. Today is the day before Thanksgiving and I'm going to be making my pumpkin pie. Personally, I don't eat it, so I'm going to be using some ingredients that I don't use much anymore, such as sugar. So I am using organic cane sugar, so that's one way of making it slightly healthier than normal. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. I use the LIBBY'S pumpkin and I follow the recipe that's on the can. Apparently I make it really well. It was my mom's favorite on Thanksgiving and my son as well, so I made it for them. And even though this is going to be our first Thanksgiving without my mom, I'm still going to make the pie for her and for my son as I do every year. Okay, so to get started, I have my pie crust. So you can either, let me open this first. You can either make your pie, get a frozen pie that's already in the dish, or you can do as I'm doing and get the pie dough and then just roll it out into the pan. So I'm going to try to move this to where you can see it as I'm doing it. It's still a little frozen. I didn't defrost it as much as I should have before I got started, but it's already starting to get a little late and I need to make this for tomorrow. I like to make it the night before so that the next day I can focus on getting myself ready and then just packing everything up and going out the door. Okay, so it's loose on the edges here, but this middle part right here is kind of stuck to it, so I want to try to be careful and not break it. The good thing with this is that because it is dough, it is malleable, and once I get this unrolled, I can kind of manipulate it into the shape that I want, so if there are cracks, I can mend them back together. And while I'm getting this stuff prepped, I do have my oven preheating to 425 per the recipe on the can. Okay, so I'm getting this open and it's cracking a bit. When that happens, you can get some water and try to manipulate it apart, so I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so I've gotten this unraveled. It's kind of a mess. I don't know if you can see. I got a few holes in there. So when I put it in the pie pan, I'm gonna wet it a little bit so that I can get those holes patched up and have a nice, even, smooth pie crust. The reason this happened is, as I said, I didn't let it defrost long enough. It was only out for maybe 20 minutes, and I probably should have left it out a bit longer before I started working with it. And depending on the size of your pan, you may have excess, and I usually do, which is pretty good because you can take some of that excess off the edge once you've molded it and use that to kind of patch up any extra holes that you may need to focus on at the bottom of the pan, because you don't want the pumpkin mixture to seep through the crust and get underneath it while it's baking, because then that's not good. Once you have the bottom the way you want it, you want to lay the edge down and then just pinch it all around so that you get a little design. I'm horrible at that. My pie crust edge always looks a little wonky, but as I've said before, I'm more about taste and presentation. If you're more about presentation, or if you make sure your stuff is presentable as well as tasty, then you might want to check out some other videos or websites on how to make a nicer pie crust. One way you can do it is to kind of just get it a straight edge, so that this way there's no discrepancy in the way it looks. But as I said, for me, right now you can see I've got I've got the bottom all patched up so it's nice and even. There is pie along the edge of the back here. So what I'm gonna do is, as long as it's flat against the side of the pan, because you want to make sure that too, you don't want to have any pockets underneath, like right here. It needs to go a little flatter against there. So make sure you have that also before you start manipulating the edge. So once that's done, you just take it and pinch until you get the design that you want. Just keep pinching along the edge. In some places, like right there, I just made a little bit of a hole. So what you can do is kind of push this excess in a bit to kind of give you that extra give that you need to be able to make the pinch and the design that you want. And if you do push that in, make sure that it's not pulling the crust away from the edge of the pan. And then once you have that, you want to just make sure you don't have any excess hanging off the edge there, like here. So you want to get a knife and just cut that off, or you can just use the edge of the pan as your cutting point and just pull that off. So for me, this is good enough. As I said, I'm not about worrying about presentation as much as I am about flavor. So this is good enough for me. Now you do not want to heat the pie pan before you put it in with the pie filling. So now we're going to go ahead and make our filling. So you're going to need 2 bowls for this. You're going to need a small bowl to mix together all of the dry ingredients, and then a bigger bowl where you're going to put the wet ingredients and then eventually add in the dry ingredients to that. So the dry ingredients you want to mix together, you need 3/4 cups of sugar. A 1/2 teaspoon of salt, one teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Now normally when I make desserts for myself that are keto, I use Ceylon cinnamon. Since again, I'm not eating this and the people that are eating it are not eating a keto specific diet, I'm using regular ground cinnamon. Then to that you need a 1/2 teaspoon of ginger. And a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves. Now, if you've never made your own pie before, the cloves is what gives it that's the most recognizable scent of a pumpkin pie, in my opinion. That's the strongest one of the spices that you're using. Okay, so once you have the sugar and the spices together in the bowl, you just mix them up so that it's well blended. And you're going to keep doing that until, because as I do this, there are still some darker patches, meaning that some of the spices like the cinnamon or the cloves are not actually fully mixed in. So you want to keep mixing until you don't see that streak of darker color. So now it's pretty well blended. So I'm going to move on to the bigger bowl. And what you're going to do in the bigger bowl is you're going to get 2 eggs. and you want to beat those eggs. Okay, so once the eggs are beat, you are then going to add your pureed pumpkin. Again, if you're making it from scratch, you have your own pumpkin aside. This is 15 ounces worth of pumpkin, so if you make your own pumpkin puree, make sure you're using 15 ounces worth. Okay, so you mix in your pumpkin puree to the beaten egg. Once those are mixed together, you're going to slowly add in your spice mixture so that you get it nice and well blended. So because this is a two-handed process, it can get a little awkward. If you have a stand mixer, then while you have the mixer going on a low setting, you can then sprinkle in the spice mixture. And as you add this mixture in, the spice mixture into your pumpkin, you're going to see it start getting much darker. That's the last of my spice mixture. And you want to make sure that when you're mixing, you get the sides and the bottom so that there aren't chunks or bits of the pumpkin puree that doesn't have the spice mixture mixed into it. That helps to get a nice even flavor throughout your pie, because if you have areas where it's unseasoned pumpkin puree, it's going to taste different in the pie, and you don't want that. Now that that's well blended, we're going to add in our evaporated milk. So you want to have a 12-ounce can of evaporated milk. Make sure that it is 12 ounces and that it is evaporated, not condensed. Condensed is a much thicker, sweeter milk. And once again, you're going to slowly stir it into your mixture. You don't want to just dump the whole thing in. If you do, you do, but try to do it slowly. Now, the opposite of when you put the spice mixture in and that made it darker, as you put the milk in, it's going to make it lighter. And obviously, with the texture of the evaporated milk being so thin, it is also going to thin out your mixture so that it becomes more of a liquid. You stir it in slowly so that you can get a nice even distribution and you don't have pockets where it's not mixed in well. And you'll know that it is thoroughly mixed when you don't see spots of the darker pumpkin puree or light streaks of the milk throughout your mixture. Once it's all a nice even color and you can actually see the spices distributed throughout the pumpkin, then you know that it is ready. Now that my mixture is ready, I'm going to put it into the pie crust. Now I always end up with extra mixture. I go up per the recipe. Sometimes I guess if I use a smaller pie pan than expected, it does say it is for a 9-inch pie pan. I honestly don't even know what size this is. I'm gonna assume it's probably 8 because it does look a little small. So if I have enough, I might make a second pie because, as I said, my son loves it and he can eat a whole pie by himself. If not, I put it aside and I will make him pumpkin pancakes or something like that so that it doesn't go to waste. Okay, so right now we're going to put our mixture into the pie pan. You don't want to fill it to the brim. This is pretty full. It's more than 3/4 full, but you don't want to fill it to the brim because the pie mixture will rise a bit and you don't want it coming up and over the crust when it's in the oven and making a big mess. So this is pretty good here. As I said, it's more than 3/4 full, but I still have about 1 inch or so before it rises and comes over the pie crust. So now that the mixture is in the crust, I'm going to put it in the oven, as I said, at 425, and it's going to go in for about 15 minutes. When that 15 minutes is up, you need to reduce the heat to 350 degrees and then continue to bake the pie for another 40 to 50 minutes. Now, it's very important to make sure that you reduce the heat because that will help the pumpkin puree portion cook thoroughly and not burn your pie crust. If you leave it high that whole time, the pie crust is just going to keep cooking, and then that will burn. So your pumpkin mixture will be fine, but your pie crust will be burned, and then that's not a very enjoyable pie either. So I'm going to put this in now, and I will set my timer for 15 minutes. So I will be back when it's time to reduce the heat. Okay guys, so as you can hear, the 15 minutes are up. So I'm now going to reduce the heat to 350. And it says to put it back in for another 40 to 50 minutes, or to leave it in for another 40 to 50 minutes. So I'm going to put it for 45 minutes right now. Okay, so I'm going to come back in 45 minutes and take a look at it. The best way to tell if your pie is ready is if you stick a knife or a toothpick or something in the center, and when you pull it out, it comes out nice and clean. I usually use a butter knife, and so my pie will have a little slit in the middle, but that's fine. You will see I do have a wire rack right here. The reason I have this is because once the pie is done, you need to let it cool on a wire rack for about 2 to 3 hours before you can refrigerate it for the next day, or even serve it if you can make it the same day. I will be back when the pie is done so that you can see the final result. So there you have it. Quick, easy pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving. You can make it any time of year. I only make it on Thanksgiving. I don't like pumpkin pie, as I said, so I don't eat it. But I really do love the smell that it spreads throughout the house. It's a very fall smell. It's very cozy and earthy. So I really love the way it smells, so that's why I don't mind making it for my family. And they seem to really enjoy the way that I make it. So there you go. Let me know if you have any questions or comments in the section down below. And I will see you next time. Bye.